Introduction and Dramatis Personae for Oedipus. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Oedipus by Lucius Annaeus Sêneca. Translated by Frank Justus Miller. Introduction. An oracle once came to Laius, king of Thebes, that he should perish by his own son's hands. When, therefore, a son was born to him, he gave the infant to his chief of shepherds to expose on Mount Cithaeron. But the tender-hearted rustic gave the babe instead to a wandering herdsman of Polybus, the king of Corinth. Years later, a reputed son of Polybus, Oedipus by name, fearing an oracle which doomed him to slay his father and wed his mother, fled from Corinth, that so he might escape this dreadful fate. As he fared northward, he met and slew an old man who imperiously disputed the narrow way with him. Upon arriving at the Theban land, he read the riddle of the Sphinx, and so destroyed that monster which Juno had sent to harass the land which she hated. And for this service Oedipus was made the husband of Jocasta, the widowed queen of Laius, who had recently been slain upon the road, and set upon the vacant throne. Now other years have passed, and sons and daughters have been born to the royal pair. But now a dreadful pestilence afflicts the state. Oedipus has sent Creon to consult the oracle, to learn the cause and seek the means of deliverance from the scourge. And while he waits his messenger's return, the murky dawn still finds him grieving for his kingdom's wretched plight. Dramatis Personae. Oedipus, king of Thebes, the son, as he supposed, of Polybus, king of Corinth, and Merope his wife, but found to be the son of Laius and Jocasta.
Read by Greg Giordano.
Jocasta, wife, and, as the play develops, found to be also the mother of Oedipus.
Read by Agnes Robert Bear.
Creon, Theban prince, brother of Jocasta.
Read by Todd.
Tiresias, a celebrated prophet of Thebes, now old and blind.
Read by Larry Wilson.
Manto, his daughter.
Read by Luminous.
Old man, sent from Corinth to announce to Oedipus the death of Polybus. Read by Alan Mapstone. Phorbus, head shepherd of the royal flocks of Thebes.
Read by Inco.
Messenger, who announces the self-inflicted blindness of Oedipus and the suicide of Jocasta.
Read by Stefan.
Chorus of Theban elders.
Read by DC.
And Alan Mapstone. Narration.
Read by Beeswax Candle.
The scene is laid before the royal palace of Thebes. The play opens in the early morning of the day within which the tragedy is consummated. End of introduction and Dramatis Personae.
Act 1 of Oedipus by Lucius Annaeus Sêneca, translated by Frank Justus Miller. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Act 1.
Oedipus.
Now night has fled, with a wavering gleam returns the sun, all wrapped in murky clouds. His beams arise, and with their baleful light shall soon look forth upon our stricken homes, and day reveal the havoc of the night. Oh, who in all this realm is glad? O fate, that seemest good, how many ills lie hid behind thy smiling face, as lofty peaks most feel the wind's abuse, and as the cliff that with its rocky front divides the deep, the waves of e'en quiet sea assail, so is the loftiest power the most exposed to hostile fate's assaults. 'Twas well conceived that I should flee the kingdom of my sire, old Polybus, and from my fears be freed, a homeless exile, dauntless, wandering, be heaven and all the gods my witnesses. I chanced upon this realm, and even now the dreadful fear remains that by my hand my sire shall die. Thus spoke the Delphic god, and still another, greater sin he showed. And can there be a blacker crime than this? A father slain? Oh, cursed impiety! 'Twere shame to tell the hideous oracle, for Phoebus warned me of my father's couch, and impious wedlock. 'Twas the fear of this that drove me headlong from my father's realm, and for no sin I left my native land. All self-distrustful did I well secure thy sacred laws, O Mother Nature, still. When in the heart a mighty dread abides, thou well assured it cannot be fulfilled. The fear remains, I fear exceedingly, nor can I trust myself unto myself. And even now the fates are aimed at me. For what am I to think when this fell pest, although it lays its blighting hand on all, spares me alone? For what new horror now am I reserved? Amidst my city's woes, mid funeral pyres that ever must be wet with tears of grief afresh, mid heaps of slain I stand unscathed. And couldst thou hope that thou, a culprit at the bar of God, shouldst gain for guilt a wholesome kingdom in return? Nay, rather, I myself infect the air, for now no breeze with its soft breath relieves our spirits suffocating with the heat. No gentle zephyrs breathe upon the land, but Titan with the dog-star's scorching fires doth parch us, pressing hard upon the back of Nemea's lion. From their wonted streams the waters all have fled, and from the herbs their accustomed green. Now Dirce's fount is dry, while to a trickling till Ismenus' flood hath shrunk, and barely laves the naked sands. Athwart the sky doth Phoebus' sister glide, with paling light, and mid the lowering clouds the darkling heavens fade. No starlight gleams amid the gloomy silence of the night, but heavy mists brood low upon the earth, and those bright mansions of the heavenly gods are sicklied over with the hues of hell. The full-grown harvest doth withhold its fruit, and though the yellow fields stand thick with corn, upon the stalk the shriveled grain is dead. No class is free from this destructive plague, but every age and sex falls equally, where youth with age and sire with son are joined, and wife and husband are together burned. Now funerals claim no more their wonted grief. The magnitude of woe hath dried our eyes, and tears, the last resource of woeful hearts, have perished utterly. The stricken sire here bears his son unto the funeral flames, and there the mother lays her dead child down, and hastes to bring another to the pyre. Nay, in the midst of grief a new woe springs, for while they minister unto the dead, themselves need funeral rites. Anon they burn with others' fires the bodies of their friends. The fire is stolen, for in their wretchedness no shame remains. No separate tombs receive the hallowed bones. Mere burning is enough. How small a covering their ashes need! And yet the land does not suffice for all. And now the very woods have failed the pyre. Nor prayers nor skill avail to serve the sick. For even they who own the healing art are smitten down. The baleful pestilence removes the check that would restrain its force. So, prostrate at the altar do I fall, and, stretching suppliant hands, I pray the gods to grant a speedy end, that in my death I may anticipate my falling throne, nor be myself the last of all to die, the sole surviving remnant of my realm. O gods of heaven, too hard! O heavy fate! Is death to be denied to me alone? So easy for all else! Come, fly the land thy baleful touch has tainted. Leave thou here the grief, the death, the pestilent air, which with thyself thou bring'st. Go speed thy flight to any land, even to thy parents' realm.
Jocasta, who has entered in time to hear her husband's last words.
What boots it, husband, to augment thy woes with lamentations? For I think, indeed, this very thing is regal to endure, adversity and all the more to stand, with heart more valiant and with foot more sure, when the weight of empire totters to its fall. For 'tis not manly to present thy back to fortune's darts.
Not mine the guilt of fear. My valor feels no such ignoble throes. Should swords be drawn against me, should the dreadful power of Mars upon me rush, against the very giants would I stand. The Sphinx I fled not when she wove her words in mystic measures, but I bore to look upon the bloody jaws of that fell bard, and on the ground all white with scattered bones. But when, from a lofty cliff, with threatening mien, the baleful creature poised her wings to strike, and, like a savage lion, lashed her tail, in act to spring, still did I dare my fate and ask her riddle. Then with horrid sound of deadly jaws together crashed, she spake, that while her claws, impatient of delay, and eager for my vitals, rent the rock, but the close-wrought words of fate with guile entwined, and that dark riddle of the winged beast did I resolve.
What mean'st then thou by these thy maddened prayers for death? Thou mightst have died, but no, the very sceptre in thy hand is thy reward for that fell Sphinx destroyed.
Yea, that the artful monster's cruel shade doth war against me still. Now she alone, in vengeance for her death, is wasting Thebes. But now one only way of safety still is left. If Phoebus shows us not of safety, all bereft.
Enter the chorus of Theban elders, deploring the violence of the plague.
How art thou fallen, O glorious stock of Cadmus, thou and Thebes in one? How dost thou see, poor ruined Thebes, thy lands laid waste and tenantless? And thou, O Theban Bacchus, here, that hardy soldiery of thine, thy comrades to the farthest Ind, who dared invade the eastern plains, and plant thy banners at the gates of dawn, behold, destruction feeds on them. They saw the blessed Arabes mid spicy groves, and the fleeing steeds of the Parthian, deadliest when he flees. They trod the marge of the ruddy sea, where Phoebus his rising beams displays, and the day reveals, where his nearer fires darken the naked Indians. Yea, we, that race invincible, beneath the hand of greedy fate, are falling fast. The gloomy retinue of death in march unceasing hurries on. The grieving line unending hastes to the place of death. Space fails the throng. For though 7 gates stand open wide, still for the crowding funerals 'tis not enough. For everywhere is carnage seen, and death treads hard upon the heels of death. The sluggish ewes first felt the blight, for the woolly flock the rich grass cropped to its own doom. At the victim's neck the priest stood still, in act to strike. But while his hand still poised the blow, behold, the bull with gilded horns fell heavily, whereat his neck, beneath the shock of this huge weight, was broken and asunder yawned. No blood the sacred weapon stained, but from the wound dark gore oozed forth. The steed a sudden languor feels, and stumbles in his circling course, while from his downward sinking side his rider falls. The abandoned flocks lie in the fields. The bull amid his dying herd is pining, and the shepherd fails his scanty flock, for he himself, midst his wasting kine, is perishing. The stag no more fears the ravenous wolf, no longer the lion's roar is heard. The shaggy bear has lost her rage, and the lurking serpent his deadly sting. For parched and dying now he lies, with venom dried. No more do the woods, with leafage crowned, spread out their shade in the mountain glens. No more are fields with verdure clad. No vines bend low with laden arms. For the very earth has felt the breath of our dire pestilence. Through the riven bars of Erebus, with torches lit in Tartara, the raging band of the Furies troop. Dark Phlegethon has changed his course, and forced the waters of the Styx to mingle with our Theban streams. Grim death opes wide his greedy jaws, and all his baleful wings outspreads. And he who plies that swollen stream in his roomy skiff, though his age is fresh and hardy, scarce can raise his arms, or wearied with his constant toil, and the passage of the endless throng. 'Tis even rumoured that the dog hath burst the chains of Taenarus, and through our fields is wandering. Now dreadful prodigies appear. The earth gives out a rumbling sound, and ghosts go stealing through the groves, larger than mortal forms, and twice the trees of our Cadmean woods have trembled sore and shed their snows. Twice Dursey flowed with streams of blood. And in the stilly night we heard the baying of Amphion's hounds. O cruel, strange new form of death! And worse than death, the sluggish limbs are with a weary languor seized, the sickly cheek with fever burns, and all the head with loathsome sores is blotched. Now heated vapours rise, and scorch with fever's flames the brain within the body's citadel, and the throbbing temples swell with blood. The eyeballs start, the accursed fire devours the limbs, the ears resound, and from the nostrils dark blood drips, and strains apart the swelling veins. Now quick convulsions rend and tear the inmost vitals. Now to their burning hearts they strain cold stones to soothe their agony, and they whom laxer care permits, since they who should control are dead, the fountain seek, and feed their thirst with copious draughts. The smitten throng all prostrate at the altars lie, and pray for death. And this alone the gods compliant grant to them. Men seek the sacred fanes and pray, not that the gods may be appeased, but glutted with their feast of death.
Creon is seen approaching.
But who with hasty step the palace seeks? Is this our Creon, high in birth and deed? Or does my sickened soul see false for true? 'Tis Creon's self, in answer to our prayer.
End of Act 1. Act 2 of Oedipus by Lucius Aeneas Seneca, translated by Frank Justus Miller. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Act 2. Enter Creon.
Oedipus.
I quake with horror, and I fear to know the tendency of fate. My trembling soul strives 'neath a double load, for joy and grief lie mingled still in dark obscurity. I shrink from knowing what I long to know. Wherefore, O brother of my consort, speak, and if to weary hearts thou bring'st relief, with quickened utterance thy news proclaim.
In dark obscurity the answer lies.
Who gives me doubtful succour grants me none.
It is the custom of the Delphic god, in dark enigmas, to conceal the fates.
Yet speak, however dark the riddle be, 'tis given to Oedipus alone to solve.
Apollo doth ordain that banishment be meted out to him who slew our king, and so our murdered Laius be avenged. For only thus shall we again behold the day's clear light, and drink safe draughts of air.
Who was the slayer of the noble king? Tell who is designated by the god, that he that had allotted punishment may pay.
May it be granted me to tell the things to sight and hearing dreadful. At the thought, numb horror holds my limbs, my blood runs cold. When to Apollo's hallowed shrine I came, with reverent feet and pious hands upraised, Parnassus' double-crested, snowy peak gave forth a fearful crash, the laurels shook, and fair Castilia's waters ceased to flow. The priestess of the son of Leto then began to spread her bristling locks abroad, and felt the inspiration of the god. Scarce had she reached the sacred inner shrine, when, with a roar beyond the voice of man, there sounded forth this doubtful oracle. Kind shall the stars return to the Theban city of Cadmus, if, O fugitive guest, Ismenian darest thou leavest, stained with the blood of a king, from infancy known to Apollo. Brief shall be thy joys, the impious joys of slaughter. For thee war thou bringest, and war to thy children thou leavest, foul returned once more to the impious arms of thy mother.
What I at heaven's command now meditate, long since should have been rendered to the king, that none by craft might violate the throne, and most doth it become a sceptred king to guard the life of kings, for none lament the death of him whose safety breedeth fear.
Our care for him a greater fear removed.
What fear so great that duty to prevent?
The Sphinx, and her accursed riddles threats.
Then now at heaven's command shall be atoned that impious deed, whoever of the gods dost look with kindly eye upon our realm, and thou, whose hand doth guide the rolling sphere, and thou, O glory of the smiling sky, who in thy wandering course dost rule the stars, and with thy flying wheels dost measure out the slow procession of the centuries. Thou sister of the sun, night wanderer, who ever dost reflect thy brother's fires, and thou, great ruler of the boisterous winds, who o'er the level deep dost drive thy car, and thou, who dost allot the sunless homes, may he, by whose right hand King Laius fell, no peaceful home, no trusty lairs find, and may no land in hospitality receive his cheerless, exiled wanderings, or shameful marriage may he live to grieve, and monstrous progeny may he his sire by his own hand destroy, and may he do, what doom more dreadful can I imprecate, the deed which by my flight I did not do. No room for pardon shall be given him. By this my regal sceptre do I swear, both by the sway which I as stranger hold, and that I left behind by my household gods. And thee, O Neptune, who with shorter waves and twofold current dost disport thyself upon my native Corinth's double shores, and thou thyself be witness to my words, who dost inspire the fate-revealing lips of Syrah's priestess, so may Polybus my royal father spend a quiet age, and end his days in peace upon the throne. And so may Merope my mother know the marriage of her Polybus alone, as from my grasp no favouring power shall snatch that guilty one who basely slew the king. But tell me, where was that foul murder done? In open fight, or was he basely snared?
In the quest of cool Castilia's sacred font and leafy woods, along the way he fared, on either side with tangled thickets hedged. 'Twas where the road, three-forked, spreads to the plain. One leads through Phoenician land to Bacchus dear, where high Parnassus, by a gentle slope the lowlands leaving, lifts his double peak into the heavens, and one leads off to where two oceans bathe the land of Sisyphus. A third path, passing through Lenaean fields, along a hollow valley's winding way, attains the vagrant waters, and divides the chilling current of the Ilian stream. 'Twas here he journeyed, safe mid general peace, when on a sudden, lo, a robber band fell on him with a sword and slew him there.
Tiresias is seen approaching.
But, in the nick of time, by Phoebus roused, Tiresias, aged and with trembling limbs, hastes to our presence with what speed he may, and, as his faithful comrade Manto comes, her sightless father leading by the hand.
Enter Tiresias, led by his daughter Manto.
O priest of heaven, thou next to Phoebus' self, explain the oracle which he hath sent, and tell on whom the penalty is laid.
Because my tongue is slow and seeks delay. Thou shouldst not wonder, great-souled Oedipus. Much truth is hidden when the eye is dimmed. But when my country, when Apollo calls, I will obey. Then let me search the fates. If in my veins still flowed the blood of youth, I would myself sustain the god and speak. Now to the altar drive a pure white bull, a heifer, too, upon whose tender neck the curved yoke of toil hath never pressed. And thou, my child, who guidest my darkened steps, describe the omens which Apollo sends.
The victims are stationed before the altar as directed.
A perfect victim at the altar stands.
With prayer invoke the presence of the gods, and heap the altar high with frankincense.
Lo, on the sacred fire the spices heaped.
What of the flame? Did it with vigor seize the generous feast?
With sudden gleam it leaped into the air and quickly fell again.
And did the sacred fire burn bright and clear, and point its gleaming summit straight to heaven, and spreading outward to the breeze unfold, or crawl with course uncertain near the ground, and flickering die away in gloomy smoke?
Not one appearance only had the flame, as when the tempest-bringing iris spreads her varying colors on the vault of heaven, and with her painted bow adorns the sky, so to the sacred fire thou wouldst not tell what hue is wanting there and what prevails. Dark blue it flickered first with yellow spots, then bloody red, and then it vanished quite. But see, the flame is rent in rival parts, and the glowing embers of one sacred pile are cleft in double heaps and fall apart. O Father, horror fills me as I gaze, for as I pour the sacred liquid forth, it changes straight to blood. O horrible! And stifling smoke surrounds the royal head, and now in denser gloom it settles down upon his face, and with its veiling cloud it shuts away from him the fading light. O speak, and tell us what it doth portend.
How can I speak, who halting stand amazed amid conflicting voices of the soul? What shall I say? Dire ills are here indeed, but hidden yet in deepest mystery. With signs well known, the wrath of heaven is wont to be made manifest. But what is that which now they would disclose, and then again, with changing and destructive purpose hide? Some deed so vile it shameth heaven to tell. But quickly set the chosen victims here, and sprinkle salted meal upon their heads. With peaceful face do they endure the rites, and hands outstretched to smite.
His lofty head the bull uplifted to the eastern sky, then shunned the light of day, and quickly turned in terror from the newly risen sun.
With one blow smitten do they fall to earth.
The heifer threw herself upon the steel, and with one blow has fallen, but the bull, though smitten by a double deadly blow, distracted wanders here and there in pain, and scarce can force his struggling life away.
Driven through a narrow opening spurts the blood, or sluggish does it water deeper wounds?
The blood of one, through that same welcome thrust, doth flow in generous streams, but of the bull those yawning wounds are stained with scanty drops, while turning backward through his eyes and mouth the plenteous current flows.
These unblessed rites some dreadful ills portend. But come, describe the trusty markings of the viscera.
Oh, what is this? For not, as is their wont, with gentle motion do the entrails quake, but rather strongly throb beneath the touch, while from the veins the blood leaps forth anew. The sickly heart is shriveled up and lies deep hidden in the breast. The veins appear of livid hue. The entrails suffer lack, and from the wasting liver oozes slow a stream of black corruption. Nay, behold, a sign of dark foreboding to a king who holdeth single sway. Two swelling points of equal elevation rise to view, but both are lopped and covered with a veil. Refusing lurking place to things unseen, the hostile side uprears itself with strength, and shows 7 swelling veins, but these again an intersecting line cuts straight across, preventing their return. The natural law and order of the parts has been reversed, and nothing lies within its proper place. All on the right the blood-filled lungs appear, incapable of air. The heart no more is found upon the left, its customed place. The fatty walls, with their soft covering, no longer richly fold the entrails in. The ways of nature are in all things changed, the womb itself is most unnatural. Look close, and see what impious thing is this. O monstrous! 'Tis the unborn progeny of a heifer still unmated. Stranger still, it lies not in the wonted place, assigned by nature's laws, but fills its mother's side. It moves its members with a feeble groan, its unformed limbs with trembling rigors twitch. Black blood has stained the darkened entrails all, the mangled bodies strive e'en yet to move, make show to rise, and menace with their horns the priestly hands. The entrails shun the touch. Nor is that lowing which has frightened thee the deep-voiced roar of bulls, nor do the calls of frightened cattle sound upon our ears. It is the lowing of the altar fires. It is the frightened muttering of the shrine.
What meaning have these monstrous signs? Declare, and with no timid ears will I attend. For he who has the dregs of fortune drained fears nothing more.
The time will come to thee, when these thy ills for which thou seekest aid will blessings seem.
But tell me then, I pray, the one thing which the gods would have me know, whose hands are stained with murder of the king?
Neither the birds can summon up the name, who cleave the depths of heaven on fleeting wing, nor yet the vitals plucked from living breasts. But we must seek it in another way. The murdered king himself must be recalled from realms of everlasting night, that thus, released from Erebus, he may declare his murderer. The earth must be unsealed. The pitiless divinity of Dis must be implored, and hither brought the shades who live beyond the Styx. Now do thou tell to whom thou givest the sacred embassy. For 'tis not right for thee who hold'st the reins of government to seek the gloomy shades.
Oh, Creon, thee this task demands, to whom as next in power my kingdom looks for aid.
And while we loose the bars of deepest hell, do ye the praises of our Bacchus tell.
Exeunt Creon, Tiresias, and Manto. The chorus, in dithyrambic strain, sings in praise of Bacchus.
Bind ye now your flowing locks with the swaying ivy, brandish aloft with your languishing arms the Nysian thyrsus. O glorious light of heaven, attend the prayers which noble Thebes, thy Thebes, O beautiful Bacchus, with suppliant hands outstretched here offers thee. Turn hither thy smiling virgin face, dispel the clouds with thy starry glance, the gloomy threats of Erebus and ravenous fate. Thee it becomes to crown thy locks with flowers of the springtime, thee to bind thy head with the Tyrian fillet, or with the clinging ivy gleaming with berries softly to wreathe thy brow. Now thy hair to unbind and spread in confusion, now in close-drawn knot to collect and confine it, just as when thou, fearing the wrath of Juno, didst conceal thyself in the guise of maidens. Virgins too thou seemedst with golden ringlets, binding up thy robe with a saffron girdle. So the softer graces of living please thee, robes ungirt and flowing in long profusion. When in thy golden car thou wast drawn by lions, clad in flowing garments, the east beheld thee, all the vast expanse of the Indian country. They who drink the Ganges and cleave the surface of snowy Araxes. Seated on humble beast, the old Silenus attends thee, binding his throbbing brows with a waving garland of ivy, while the wanton priests lead on the mysterious revels. And then a troop of Bassarids with dancing step conducted thee, now ranging o'er Pangaea's foot, and now on Thracian Pindu's top. Soon mid the noble dames of Thebes, a furious Maenad, the comrade of Bacchus, in garment of fawn skin conducted the god. The Theban dames, by Bacchus excited, with streaming locks the thyrsus uplifted, in high waving hands, now joins in the revels, and wild in their madness they rend Pentheus limb from limb. Their fury spent with weary frame, they look upon their impious deed, and know it not. Into the sea realms holds the foster mother of Bacchus, round her the daughters of Nereus dance, Leucothes singing. Over the mighty deep, though new to its waves, Palemon, brother of Bacchus, rules, a mortal changed to a sea god. When in childhood a band of robbers assailing bore thee away in their flying vessel a captive, Nereus quickly calmed the billowy ocean, when lo, to rolling meadows the dark sea changes. Here stands in vernal green the flourishing plane tree, there the groves of laurel dear to Apollo, while resounds the chatter of birds in the branches. Now are the oars enwreathed with the living ivy, while at the masthead hang the clustering grapevines. There on the prow loud roars a lion of Ida. At the stern appears a terrible tiger of Ganges. Filled with terror, the pirates leap in the ocean. Straight in their plunging forms new changes appear. For first their arms are seen to shrink and fall, their bodies' length to shorten, and on their sides the hands appear as fins, with curving back. They skim the waves, and lashing their crescent tails, they dash through the water. Changed to a school of dolphins now, they follow the vessel. Soon to the Lydian stream with its precious waters receive thee, pouring down its golden waves in a billowy current. Loosed was the vanquished bow, and Scythian darts of the savage Masagedon, who mingles blood in his milky goblets. The realm of Lycurgus, bearer of axes, submitted to Bacchus. The land of the Dacians, untamable, felt his dominion, the wandering tribes of the north by Boreas smitten, and whom the Maeotis bathes with its frozen waters. Where the Arcadian star looks down from the zenith, even there the power of Bacchus extended, conquered to the scattered Gelonian peoples. From the warlike maidens their arms he wrested. Down to the earth they fell in desperate conflict, the hardy bands of Amazonian maidens. Now at last their arrows swift are abandoned, and Maenads have they become. Holy Cytheron too has streamed with slaughter, where was spilt the noble blood of Orpheon. Protus' daughters the forest sought, and Argus Juno at last consenting, paid homage to Bacchus. The island of Nexus, girt by the broad Aegean, gave to Bacchus the maid whom Theseus abandoned, compensating her loss by a better husband. Out of the rock there gushed Nectilian liquor, babbling streams at his word clove the grassy meadows. Deep the earth drank in the nectarian juices, streams of snowy milk burst forth from the fountains, mingled with Lesbian wine all fragrant with spices. Now is the bride to her place in the heavens conducted. Phoebus with flowing locks sings a stately anthem. Love, in honor of both, bears the wedding torches. Jove lays down the deadly darts of his lightning, halting his bolts of flame at the coming of Bacchus, while the gleaming stars in their boundless pasturage wander, while the sea shall gird the imprisoned earth with its waters, while the full-orbed moon shall gather her lost refulgence, while the morning star shall herald the coming of Phoebus, while in the north the bear shall fear the cerulean ocean, still shall we worship the shining face of the beautiful Bacchus.
End of Act 2. Act 3 of Oedipus by Lucius Annaeus Seneca, translated by Frank Eustace Miller. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Act 3. Enter Creon, returned from the rites of necromancy.
Oedipus.
Although thy face displays the marks of grief, declare whose death an angry heaven demands.
Thou biddest me speak where fear would silence keep.
If Thebes to ruin falling move thee not, regard the sceptre of thy kindred house.
Thou wilt repent the knowledge which thou seekest.
A useless cure for ills is ignorance, and wilt thou still obstruct the public weal?
Where foul the cure, 'tis grievous to be cured.
Thy tidings speak, or, by thy pain subdued, thou soon shalt know what angered kings can do.
Kings hate the words whose speech they would compel.
In Hades shalt thou pay thy life for all, unless thou tell the secrets of the fates.
Nay, let me hold my peace. No smaller boon was ever sought.
More often than by speech have kingdoms by the boon of silence fallen.
When silence is denied, what can be given?
He sins whose silence holds when speech is best.
Then hear in peace the words which I must speak.
Was ever punishment for speech compelled?
Afar from Thebes, there is a frowning grove near the well-watered vale of Dirce's font, and there a cypress lifts its giant head and holds within its evergreen embrace the trees around. Here stands an ancient oak, and spreads its branches dark with clustering mould. One side is torn by time's destructive hand. The rest, with roots decayed and falling, hangs supported on a neighbor's trunk. Here stand a bitter laurel, rustling linden trees, the myrtle, and an alder destined soon to sweep its oarage on the boundless sea. Midway, a mighty pine its smooth trunk lifts against the rays of Phoebus and the winds, and with its heavy shade it overwhelms the lesser trees. For, with its spreading boughs, it stands, a giant guardian of the wood. Beneath this pine there springs a gloomy pool, that never saw the sun nor light of day. An oozy swamp surrounds the sluggish pool. Here did the aged priest direct his steps. Nor was there need to wait. The gloomy spot supplied the shades of night. A trench is dug where brands are kindled, plucked from funeral pyres. The priest is shrouded in a mourning pall and waves the bough. His dark robe sweeps the earth. And now, in squalid garb and wrapped in gloom, the priest advances, with his hoary locks encircled by the yew tree's deadly leaves. Black sheep and sable oxen, backward driven, are sacrificed. The fire devours the food, and the living entrails quiver in the flames. The shades he calls, and him who rules the shades, and him who guards the dark Lethaean stream. A magic rune he mutters o'er and o'er, and fiercely chants the charm which either lures the shifting ghosts, or forces them to come. He burns the victims whole, and fills the trench with sacrificial blood, and snowy white, and, with his left hand pouring, mingles wine. Again he chants, and, bending to the earth with stronger words and frantic, summons up the mains. Loudly bayed the hounds of hell, and thrice the hollows gave a mournful sound. The whole earth trembled, and the solid ground was rent asunder. Then the priest exclaimed, I have prevailed, for strong the words I spoke. The deep and gloomy realm of chaos yawns, and for the dwellers in the home of Dis a way is opened to the world of light. The whole wood shrank away. Its trees erect in horror stood, the mighty trunks were split, and all the grove was smitten with amaze. The frightened earth crouched back with hollow groans, as if unwillingly she saw the deeps of Erchion assailed, or else herself, that back to life the dead may find a way. With crashing sounds her close-wrought barriers burst. O'er threefold Cerberus in angry rage clink loud his heavy chains. Then suddenly the earth yawned wide, and at our very feet a deep abyss appeared. I saw myself, the sluggish pools amidst the dusky shades. I saw the shadowy gods, and that black gloom no earthly night can give. At that dread sight my blood ran cold and froze within my veins, and then there hurried forth a dreadful band, and stood in armed array that viper brood, the troop of brothers sprung from dragons' teeth, and that fell pestilence, the curse of Thebes. Then grim Erinus raised her piercing cry, blind fury, dread, and all the ghastly forms which spawn and lurk within the endless shades. Grief in her madness tearing out her hair, disease scarce holding up her weary head, age burdened with itself and brooding fear. Our spirits died within us at the sight. Even the prophet's daughter stood amazed, though well she knew her father's mystic arts. But he, undaunted, since he saw them not, convoked the bloodless throng of gloomy Dis. Like clouds the shadowy forms come trooping up, and snuff the air of unrestricted heaven, not lofty Eryx in his mountain glades as many falling leaves, nor headless slopes as many flowers produce in sunny spring, when greedy bees in teeming bunches swarm. As many waves break not upon the shore, as many birds deserting the Strymon streams exchange not wintry blasts and arctic snows, and seek the milder valley of the Nile, as were the shades the prophet summoned forth. In eager haste the shivering spirits seek the hiding places of the leafy grove. From out the cave, his right hand by the horns a raging bull restraining, Zethus came, and next Amphion with that famous shell whose magic strains insensate rocks allured. Here naughty Niobe, in safety now, amongst her children lifts her head in scorn and proudly counts her shades. And, worse than she, that mother, mad Argrave, next appears, with all the impious band who rent the king. Then Pentheus' self, all torn and bleeding, comes, in rage pursuing those wild bacchanals. At length, when often summoned, Laius comes. In shame and sulking, flees the shadowy throng and hides himself away. But still the seer, with unrelenting purpose, pressing on, repeats his strong, compelling exorcisms, until he brings the ghost to open view. I shudder as I tell it. There he stood, a fearful sight, his body drenched with blood, his matted locks o'erspread with horrid filth. And now, with raging tongue, the spectre spoke. O wild and savage house of Cadmus, thou who ever dost receive in brother's blood the thyrest wave, in madness rent thy sons. The greatest crime of thieves is mother's love. O fatherland, 'tis not the wrath of heaven, but sin of man by which thou art undone. No plague-fraught south wind with its deadly blast, nor yet the parched earth with its dry breath is harming thee. But 'tis thy bloody king, who as the prize of savage murder done, hath seized his father's sceptre and his bed. An impious son, but far more impious, the mother, who in most unhallowed womb bore children once again. He forced his way back to his source of life, and there begot upon his mother offspring horrible. Got brothers to himself, a custom base, whence e'en the very beasts of prey are free. O base entanglement, more monstrous far than that fell sphinx which he himself hath slain. Thee, who dost the bloody sceptre hold, thy will thy sire, still unavenged, pursue, with all thy town, and with me will I bring the attendant fury of my wedding night. I'll bring her with her loud resounding lash. Thy house polluted will I overthrow, and thy penates will I trample down in fratricidal strife. Then quickly drive thy king, O Thebes, from out thy boundaries. For when his baleful step shall leave the land, in vernal green shall it renew itself. The air shall give again pure springs of life, and to the woods their beauty shall return. Destruction, pestilence, and death, distress, disease, despair, his fitting company, shall all depart with him. And he indeed will seek with eager haste to flee his realm. But him will I hedge round with barriers and hold him back. Uncertain of his way, and with his staff to guide his faltering steps, he'll creep along his sad and darkened path. Do ye the land deny him, I, his sire, will take away from him the light of heaven.
A chilling tremor penetrates my bones. The very thing which I have feared to do. They say that I have done it, but the charge that in unholy wedlock I am joined, my mother Merope refutes, for she to Polybus my sire is wedded still, and my hands from stain of father's blood are clean, since Polybus in safety lives and reigns, since both my parents free me from the guilt of murder and that base incestuous crime. What room is there for accusation more? And as for Laius, Thebes' his death deplored, long ere I set my feet upon her soil. What shall we say then? Was the seer deceived? Or does the hand of God afflict the state? No, now we see these two confederates deep in a crafty plot. That priest of thine with lying tongue pretends the will of heaven, and promises my sovereignty to thee.
Would I expel my sister from the throne? But if that sacred fealty which I owe unto my kindred house restrained me not, yet fortune would herself affright me sore, for with care and danger is she ever fraught. But be thyself content to lay aside, while still thou safely mayest, the cares of state, lest, borne too long, they may o'erwhelm thee quite. In a humbler state more safely shalt thou dwell.
And dost thou bid me, then, of mine own will, to lay aside the heavy cares of state?
Thus would I counsel those to whom the way is open, yet to choose the path he will. But the lot that fortune sends thee, thou must bear.
When one desires to reign, 'tis ever thus. That humble life he praises, and the joys of ease and sleep are ever in his mouth. A peaceful face oft hides a restless heart.
Does my long loyalty defend me not?
To traitors loyalty's a cloak to crime.
Free from the burdens of a kingly state, I still enjoy the fruits of royalty. My house is honored by our citizens, and day by day thy royal gifts o'erflow, and fill my kindred home with luxury. Rich food and clothing, gifts of every sort, and safety flow to many through my aid. Why should I think aught lacking to my lot?
Because there is a lack. Prosperity ne'er halts at any bounds.
And shall I fall, prejudged, and have no right to plead my cause?
Hadst thou consideration for my life? Did old Tiresias listen to my cause? Yet I am condemned. My pattern thou, I do but follow in the way thou leadest.
But what if I am guiltless?
Kings are wont to fear alike the doubtful and the true.
Who quakes at empty fears hath true in store.
Who in a fault is taken and forgiven is filled with hate. Let all such dubious faith be far from me.
But thus is hatred bred.
Nay, he who feareth hatred overmuch knows not the art of ruling like a king. for 'tis by fear that kings are guarded most.
Who holds the sceptre with tyrannic sway doth live in fear of those who fear his power, for terror ever doth return to him who doth inspire it.
Oedipus to attendants.
Hence, away with him, deep in some rocky dungeon let him stay, while I unto the palace take my way.
Creon is led away by the attendants, while Oedipus retires into the palace.
Not thou the cause of these our ills, and not on thy account hath fate attacked the house of Labdacus. But 'tis the ancient wrath of heaven that still pursues our race. Castalia's grove once lent its shade unto the Tyrian wanderer, and Dirce gave her cooling waves, what time the great Againer's son, o'er all the earth the stolen prey of Jove pursuing, worn and spent, within these forests knelt him down, and adored the heavenly ravisher. Then by Apollo's bidding led, a wandering heifer following, upon whose neck the dragging plough, nor the plodding waggon's curving yoke had never rested, he his quest at last gave over, and his race from that ill-omened heifer named. From that time forth the land of Thebes strange monsters hath engendered. First, that serpent, sprung from the valley's depths, hissing, o'ertopped the aged oaks and lofty pines, and higher still, above Chaonia's woods, he reared his gleaming head, though on the ground his body lay in many coils. And next the teeming earth produced an impious brood of armed men. The battle call resounded loud from the curving horn, and the piercing notes of the brazen trumpet shrill were heard. Their new created nimble tongues and voices strange they first employ in hostile clamour. And the fields, the plains, their kindred soil they fill. This monster brood, consorting well with that dire seed from which they sprung, their life within a day's brief span enjoyed. For after Phoebus rose, they had their birth, but ere he set, they perished. At the dreadful sight, great terror seized the wanderer, and much he feared to face in war his new-born foes, until at length the savage youth in mutual strife fell down, and Mother Earth beheld her sons, but now produced, returned again to her embrace. And oh, that with their fall might end all impious strife within the state. May Thebes, the land of Hercules, such fratricidal strife behold no more. Why sing Actaeon's fate, whose brow the new-sprung antlers crowned of the long-lived stag, and whom his hounds, though their hapless master, still pursued? In headlong haste through the mountains and woods he flees in fear, and with nimble feet he scours the glades and rocky passes, in fear of the wind-tossed feathers hung among the trees. But most he shuns the snares which he himself has set, until at last in the still, smooth pool he sees his horns and his features wild, the pool where the goddess, too sternly chaste, had bathed her virgin limbs.
End of Act 3. Act 4 of Oedipus by Lucius Aeneas Seneca, translated by Frank Justus Miller. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Act 4.
Oedipus.
My soul is filled with dark, foreboding fear, for the gods in heaven and Hades join the charge that by my guilty hand King Laius fell. And yet my soul, in conscious innocence, and knowing better than the gods themselves, its secret deeds denies the charge. But now, along the shadowy vistas of the past, my memory beholds an aged man who fell beneath the heavy stroke of my stout staff. But first the elder strove with haughty words to drive the younger traveller from the path that was far from Thebes and Faustus' realm, where the forked road in 3 directions leads. But thou, my faithful wife, dispel my care. What span of life had Laius at his death? Fell he in manhood's bloom, or spent with age?
Midway twixt youth and age, but nearer age.
Did courtiers, thronging round, protect his course?
The many lost him on the winding way. A few by faithful toil kept near his side.
Did any fall as comrade of his fate?
One comrade in his death did valor give.
Alas, I stand convicted, for the place and number tally. Tell me now the time.
Since Laius fell, 10 harvests have been reaped.
Enter an old Corinthian man, a messenger from Merope. Old man to Oedipus.
The state of Corinth calls thee to the throne, for Polybus has gained his lasting rest.
See how a heartless fate doth compass me. But tell me how my father met his end.
In gentle sleep he breathed his life away.
My sire is dead, and not by violence. I call the gods to witness that to heaven I now in piety may lift my hands, and fear no stain of impious slaughter more. And yet a still more fearful fate remains.
Thy father's kingdom will dispel thy fears.
My father's kingdom would I seek, but still I fear my mother.
Fear'st thou her who waits with anxious heart, imploring thy return?
'Tis piety itself that bids me flee.
And wouldst thou leave her in her widowhood?
Thou speakest at the very essence of my fears.
Speak out the fear that doth oppress thy soul. For 'tis my wont in trusty confidence to counsel kings.
By Phoebus' word forewarned, from wedlock with my mother do I flee.
Then cease thy empty fears, and lay aside thy base forebodings. For I tell thee here that thou art not the son of Merope.
Why did she wish to rear a spurious son?
Because the proud security of kings is by a son established.
Tell me now how thou dost know the secrets of the court.
With my own hands I gave thee to the king.
Thou gavest me? But who gave me to thee?
A shepherd on Kithaeron's snowy slopes.
How comest thou within that sacred wood?
My sheep upon that mountain did I seek.
Now on my body name some well-known mark.
Behold, thy feet in infancy were pierced, and from thy swollen ankles art thou named.
Who was the man who gave me as a gift into thy hands?
He fed the royal flocks, and under him the hireling shepherds served.
But tell his name.
An old man's memory grows faint, and weakly falters with disuse.
But wouldst thou know the features of the man?
I might recall him, for a slender clue oft-times awakens memory of things long buried and forgot.
Then hasten, slaves, let all the master shepherds drive their flocks before the altar here. Yea, summon all, on whom depends the guidance of the flocks.
Or chance or providence has kept thy fates in darkness hid. What long hath lain concealed, I bid thee suffer to remain in doubt. For often truth, when brought into the light, becomes the bane of him who seeks for her.
Can any ills be worse than those I fear?
Oh, be thou sure the truth is big with fate, whose meaning must be sought with toil and pain. The public weal calls there, and here thine own, and both with equal voice. Direct thy steps along a middle course. Provoke not fate. Permit thy fortune to unfold itself. It profits naught to change a happy state.
A change is well when all is at the worst.
What better canst thou ask than royal birth? No further seek, lest thou thy sire repent.
Though I should prove to be of shameful blood, my purpose still is fixed to know the truth.
Enter Phorbus, the head shepherd.
But see, the aged man, old Phorbus, comes, 'neath whose control the royal flocks are kept. Dost thou remember still his face or name?
His form eludes my mind, not fully known, and yet again not all unknown his face.
Old man to Phorbus.
Old man, while Laius still was king, didst thou, his shepherd, ever drive the royal flocks to pasture here upon Kithaeron's slopes?
On fair Kithaeron's sunny slopes my flocks have ever found the greenest pasturage.
Dost thou know me?
But dim and indistinct, my memory.
Didst thou at any time an infant boy deliver to this man?
Phorbus falters and turns pale.
Come then, speak out. Why dost thou hesitate? And why does pallor overspread thy cheeks? Why seek for words? The truth no respite needs.
Thou speakest of things long buried and forgot.
But speak, or pain shall drive thee to confess.
I gave a boy to him, a useless gift. He never could have lived or known the light.
The gods forbid! The child is living still, and may his life be long on earth, I pray.
Why dost thou think the child did not survive?
A slender rod of iron his ankles pierced, and bound his limbs. This wound produced a sore, which by contagion spread o'er all his frame.
Why question more? The fatal truth draws near. Who was that infant boy?
My lips are sealed.
Bring hither fire, its flame shall loose thy speech.
Must truth be sought along such cruel paths? I pray thy grace.
If I seem harsh to thee, or headstrong, thy revenge is in thy hand. The truth revealed, then speak. Who was the child? Of what sire gotten? Of what mother born?
He was the son of her who is thy wife.
Then yawn, O earth, and thou, O king of shades, into the lowest depths of Hades hurl this vile confounder of the sun and sire. Ye citizens, on my incestuous head heap crushing rocks, with weapons slaughter me. Let husbands, fathers, sons, and brothers, all whose name I have defiled, against me arm, and let the poor plague-smitten populace hurl blazing brands from off their funeral pyres. The plague spot of the age I wander here, heaven-cursed polluter of all sacred ties, who in the day when first I breathed the air was doomed to death.
Oedipus to himself.
Call up thy courage now, and dare some deed befitting these thy crimes. Haste to thy palace and congratulate the mother's house increased by children's sons.
Exit.
Chorus.
If it were mine to choose my fate, and fashion as I would, I'd trim my sails to the gentle breeze, lest by the raging blasts o'erwhelmed my spars should broken be. May soft and gently blowing winds my dauntless bark lead on, and ever on the middle course, where safely runs the path of life, may I be travelling. Fearing the Cretan king, 'tis said, and trusting in strange arts, young Icarus essayed the stars, and strove to conquer birds in flight, on false wings balancing. He fell into the raging sea, and his name alone survived. But wiser far old Daedalus a safer course midst the clouds pursued, awaiting his winged son. As the timid bird flees the threatening hawk, and collects her scattered young, so the father watched till he saw his son, plying his hands in the gulfing sea, enmeshed in his useless wings. So does he stand in treacherous ways, whoever goes beyond the bounds ordained by nature's law.
Enter messenger from within the palace.
But what is this? The palace gates resound.
Behold, it is the royal messenger.
With wild and woeful mien he seems to come.
Speak out, and tell us what the news thou bringst.
End of Act 4. Act 5 of Oedipus by Lucius Aeneas Seneca. Translated by Frank Justus Miller. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Act 5.
Messenger.
When Oedipus his impious race perceived, and saw the warning fates had been fulfilled, when on a hideous charge he stood condemned, then with a deadly purpose in his breast did he approach his palace, and in haste beneath those hated battlements he went, and as a lion rages o'er the sands, and threatening tosses back his tawny mane, so Oedipus advanced with blazing eyes and stern, mad face, while hollow groans burst forth, and from his limbs there dripped a chilling sweat. He foams and vents a stream of threatening words, and from his heart his mighty grief o'erflows. He, in his madness, seeks against himself some heavy penalty, and like his fate. Why do I wait for punishment? He cries. Let my guilty heart with hostile sword be pierced, or overwhelmed with flames or crushing rocks. Oh, for a tiger or some bird of prey to rend my tender flesh, do thou thyself, who hast beheld full many deeds of blood. O cursed Zephyrin, from thy forests send thy wild beasts 'gainst me, or thy greedy dogs. Oh, that Agave were returned to earth. But thou, my soul, why dost thou shrink from death? For death alone can make thee innocent. So spake he, and his impious hand he laid upon the hilt, and drew his glittering sword. And dost thou then, with this brief punishment, expect to pay thy mighty debt of guilt, and with one blow wilt balance all thy sins? Thy death would satisfy thy murdered sire, but what to appease thy mother wilt thou do, and those thy children shamefully begot? What recompense canst make unto thy land, which for thy sin is smit with pestilence? Such debts as these thou canst not pay by death. Let nature, who in Oedipus alone, strange births devising, hath her laws o'erturned, subvert herself again to punish him. Let it be mine, in never-ending round, to live and die, and to be born again, that for my crimes by never-ending pain I may atone. Now use thy wit, poor soul, since by repeated death thou canst not die. Choose, then, some form of lingering death in life, some way by which, not numbered with the dead, nor yet the living, thou mayest linger on. So die, that in thy death thou mayest remain without the land wherein thy Father dwells. O soul, why dost thou hesitate? And then a sudden stream of tears o'erspread his face and wet his cheeks. And can my tears suffice? Too long my eyes these useless showers have poured. Nay, let them follow where the tears have flowed, from out their sockets driven. O gods of wedlock, is this enough? These eyes must be removed. He spoke with frenzied rage, and all the while his cheeks were flaming with a dangerous light, and his starting eyeballs strained to leave their seats. His face was full of passion, fierce resolve. Groaning, he thrust his hands into his eyes, and those fierce eyes stood forth to meet his hands, and eager followed of their own accord their kindred hands, as courting that deep wound, deep in with hooked fingers he explores, and rends his eyeballs from their deepest roots, still stays his hands within those empty seats, and tears the hollow sockets with his nails, with savage joy, with vain and endless rage. So great his fear and hatred of the light, he lifts his head, and with those empty eyes, the heavens surveying, tests his darkened sight. Whatever from his mangled eyes still hangs, he tears away, and now in triumph cries to all the gods, "Oh, spare my country now, I pray, for I have done what must be done, and I have paid the penalty I owed. Now have I found at last a fitting knight to match my impious wedlock." As he speaks, his face is watered by a hideous shower, as the blood flows streaming from his ruptured veins.
By fate we're driven, then yield to fate. No anxious brooding care can change the thread of destiny that falls from that grim spindle of the fates. Whate'er we mortals suffer here, whate'er we do, all hath its birth in that deep realm of mystery. Stern Lachesis her distaff whirls, spinning the threads of mortal men, but with no backward turning hand. All things in ordered pathways go, and on our natal day was fixed our day of death. Not God himself can change the current of our lives, which bears its own compelling force within itself. Each life goes on in order fixed and absolute, unmoved by prayer. Nay, fear itself has been by many found a bane. For while they sought to shun their fate, they came upon it in their flight. But now the palace gates resound, and see, the sightless king himself, with none to guide, takes hitherward his blind and groping way.
Enter Oedipus.
Now all is well and finished to my sire. I've paid the debt I owed. How sweet these shades! What God at length appeased hath wrapped my head in a pall of darkness, and my crimes forgiven. Now have I scaped the conscious eye of day, and nothing dost thou owe, O parricide, to thine avenging hand. Thy sight is gone, and such a countenance becomes thee well.
Enter Jocasta.
See where with hurried steps Jocasta comes, beside herself and overcome with grief, as when in maddened rage that Theban dame her son's head tore away and realized what she had done. She wavers, longs to speak to that afflicted one, and fears to speak. Now shame at last has yielded to her grief, and with a faltering tongue she speaks to him.
What shall I call thee? Son, dost shun that name? Thou art my son. Thy shame confesseth it. And yet, O son, though all unwilling, speak. Why dost thou turn away thy sightless face?
Who now forbids me to enjoy my night? Who gives me back mine eyes? My mother's voice. Oh, awful sound! Now is my labor vain. Stay where thou art. Each step is impious. Let boundless seas our guilty souls divide, and lands remote. And if beneath this land some other hangs, beholding other stars, may that far country one of us receive.
What thou deplorest is the fault of fate. A fated crime can leave no stain of sin.
Now cease thy words, O mother, spare my ears. By these poor remnants of my mangled form, by that unhallowed offspring of my blood, and all that in the double names we bear is right and wrong.
Jocasta to herself.
My heart thou listest now, O soul of mine. Since thou hast shared his guilt, I hesitate to share his punishment. The beauty of all human intercourse has fallen to ruin for thy sake. Confused and lost, O wretch incestuous, not if the Father of the gods himself should hurl at me his glittering thunderbolts, could I for my foul crimes atonement make, since I the name of mother have profaned. Now death is welcome, but the way of death must I consider.
Jocasta to Oedipus.
Come thou, parricide, and lift thy hand against thy mother too. This act is wanting to complete thy work.
Jocasta to herself.
Now let the sword be drawn by this good blade, as liest my husband slain. Not so. My husband's father, by his rightful name. Shall I this weapon plunge into my breast, or thrust it deep within my waiting neck? Nay, thou knowest not how to choose a place. Strike here, O hand, through this capacious womb, which horrible the son and husband bore.
She stabs herself and falls dead.
She lies in death, her failing hand relaxed, and spouting streams of blood drive out the sword.
O fate revealer, thee do I upbraid, thou god and guardian of the oracles. My father only was I doomed to slay, but now, twice parricide and pest my fears, have I been guilty, and my mother slain, for 'tis by sin of mine that she is dead. O lying Phoebus, now have I outdone the impious fates with apprehensive feet. Let me go out upon my darkened way, planting my footsteps with a faltering tread, and through the darkness grope with trembling hands. Stay not thy flight, speed thy uncertain steps, but hold, lest on thy mother's course thou tread. O Thebans, weak and smitten sore with ills, whose hearts are fainting in your breasts, behold, I flee, I go. Lift up your drooping heads. A milder sky and sweeter air shall come when I am gone. Whoever still retains his feeble life may now inhale the air in deep, life-giving draughts. Go, lend your aid to those who were to certain death resigned, for with me in my exile do I bear all pestilential humours of the land. Then come, ye blasting fates and mad despair, thou deadly pestilence, come, come with me. With such a company 'tis sweet to flee.
Oedipus exit. End of Act 5. End of Oedipus by Lucius Annaeus Seneca, translated by Frank Justus Miller.